At exactly 2:17 a.m., a single unread message sat glowing on 21-year-old Madison Reed's phone, resting silently on the passenger seat of her car, abandoned on a deserted stretch of road just outside Riverside, California, while rain dripped slowly from nearby streetlights and the distant hum of traffic echoed like a warning no one was there to hear. The message was from her mother, sent only minutes earlier, asking the same simple question she had asked every night for years. Did you get home safe? There was no reply, no missed call, no sign of struggle inside the vehicle, no shattered glass, no blood, no fingerprints out of place, no explanation for why a bright, ambitious college student who had just been laughing with friends hours earlier had suddenly vanished into thin air. What investigators would later discover inside that car would completely change the direction of the case, expose a web of lies that stretched across friendships and relationships, and reveal that Madison's disappearance had begun long before she ever stepped into her vehicle that night. If you find yourself drawn into stories that uncover hidden truths, expose deception, and reveal how quickly ordinary lives can descend into darkness, take a quiet moment right now to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every single week, we bring you deeply researched, emotionally powerful stories like this one, stories that deserve to be told and remembered. Madison Reed was not the kind of person anyone expected to disappear. She was known on campus at the University of California, Riverside, as the girl who always showed up early, who volunteered for extra projects, who called her parents every Sunday night without fail, and who had already mapped out her future with almost obsessive precision. Her professors described her as disciplined and focused, her friends saw her as warm and dependable, and her family believed she was destined for something extraordinary. She worked part-time at a local bookstore, saved most of her income, rarely drank, and avoided trouble with a caution that sometimes made her seem older than her age. Which is why, when she accepted an invitation to a late-night party on Friday, March 12, 2022, her parents were quietly surprised, unaware that this single decision would place her directly in the path of a carefully concealed danger. The party was hosted at a rented house near the edge of town, a place known among students as a weekend escape where music was loud, rules were non-existent, and privacy was guaranteed. When Madison arrived just after 9:30 p.m., she sent her roommate a photo of herself smiling under the porch lights, her long brown hair styled neatly, her denim jacket draped over a simple white dress, and her caption reading, "I'll be back before midnight, promise." It was a promise she fully intended to keep. Witnesses later confirmed that Madison stayed close to familiar faces, drank very little, and spent most of the evening laughing with two friends near the kitchen counter, far from the louder crowd gathered in the living room. On the surface, nothing about that night suggested danger, yet subtle moments captured in videos and photographs would later take on disturbing significance when reviewed by investigators. By 11:47 p.m., Madison was seen stepping outside to take a phone call, her expression shifting from relaxed to visibly tense as she paced near the driveway. No one heard what was said, but security footage from a nearby property recorded her standing alone for nearly 8 minutes, occasionally glancing back toward the house, as though deciding whether to return inside. When she finally re-entered, her demeanor had changed. Friends described her as quieter, distracted, and unusually eager to leave. At 12:19 a.m., she told multiple people she was heading home, hugged her closest friend, and walked toward her car, unaware that this would be the last time anyone who loved her would see her alive. At 7:03 a.m. the next morning, Madison's mother called her phone after noticing she had not checked in overnight. The call went straight to voicemail. At 8:15 a.m., her roommate reported her missing. By noon, police had located Madison's vehicle parked neatly along Canyon Road, 15 miles from the party, with the doors locked, her purse still inside, her phone resting on the seat, and her keys missing. There were no signs of forced entry, no nearby surveillance cameras that had captured her arrival, and no witnesses who remembered seeing her car parked there during the night. It was as if Madison had simply driven to that isolated spot and vanished. As investigators began reconstructing her final hours, a disturbing pattern slowly emerged. Phone records revealed that Madison had received multiple calls from the same unknown number in the days leading up to her disappearance, all occurring late at night, all lasting several minutes, and all deleted from her call history shortly after. Social media messages showed vague conversations with someone using a private account, someone who seemed to know intimate details about her schedule, her routines, and her fears. Friends admitted that Madison had recently become anxious, frequently checking her surroundings and refusing to walk alone after dark, yet she had never explained why. When detectives attempted to trace the unknown number, they discovered it was linked to a prepaid phone purchased with cash at a gas station only weeks earlier. From a behavioral standpoint, experts would later point out that Madison's sudden withdrawal at the party, her urgent desire to leave, and her choice to drive toward a secluded route instead of her usual highway suggested that she was responding to immediate psychological pressure rather than acting freely. Someone had contacted her that night. Someone had convinced her to meet. Someone had made her believe she had no choice. For 3 days, volunteers, police officers, helicopters, and search dogs combed forests, rivers, abandoned buildings, and remote fields across Riverside County. Flyers with Madison's smiling face appeared on every street corner. Candlelight vigils filled college courtyards. News stations broadcast her story nationwide. Her parents stood before cameras, begging anyone with information to come forward. Yet with each passing hour, hope began to fade, replaced by the growing fear that the truth would be far darker than anyone was prepared to face. Then, on the morning of March 15th, a hiker traveling through a remote canyon trail made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the community and shatter the last fragile thread of optimism investigators had been holding on to. But what authorities found at that location raised more questions than it answered, and the evidence hidden within Madison's final digital footprint would soon point toward a betrayal far closer than anyone imagined. Before we continue into the shocking discoveries that changed this investigation forever, take a moment to support this channel by liking this video, subscribing for more deeply researched stories, and leaving your thoughts in the comments below, because your engagement helps ensure that stories like Madison's are never forgotten. When authorities arrived at the canyon trail on the morning of March 15th, the atmosphere was thick with dread long before anyone spoke a word. The hiker who had made the discovery stood trembling beside his vehicle, unable to fully process what he had seen, while deputies carefully cordoned off the area with yellow tape that fluttered weakly in the cold morning breeze. Nearly 40 feet below the trail, partially concealed by shrubs and jagged rocks, lay Madison Reed's body, positioned in a way that immediately raised disturbing questions about how she had arrived there. There were no visible signs that she had fallen accidentally, no skid marks, no disturbed soil along the edge of the path, and no indication of struggle nearby, suggesting that she had not reached this location on her own. Instead, the placement of her body pointed toward deliberate transport and calculated disposal, the kind that required time, planning, and a chilling level of emotional detachment. The coroner's preliminary examination confirmed what investigators had feared most. Madison had not died from exposure or an accident. She had been strangled, her airway compressed with enough force to cause irreversible damage within minutes, leaving faint bruising along her neck that would only become visible under specialized lighting. Toxicology reports later revealed traces of a mild sedative in her bloodstream, a substance commonly used to induce drowsiness and confusion, meaning she had likely been incapacitated before her death. This single detail transformed the case from a missing person investigation into a premeditated homicide, immediately narrowing the field of suspects to those who had access to her, knowledge of her habits, and the opportunity to isolate her without raising suspicion. As forensic teams meticulously processed the scene, they uncovered a series of subtle but critical clues. Tire impressions near a service road indicated that a vehicle had been parked there briefly within the last 48 hours, despite the area being restricted and rarely traveled. A fragment of blue fabric caught on a thorny bush matched the color of Madison's jacket from a night of the party, suggesting she had been moved through the area rather than arriving voluntarily. Most disturbingly, a single footprint found several yards from her body did not match Madison's shoe size, implying the presence of another person who had remained close during her final moments. Meanwhile, detectives turned their focus back to Madison's digital life, believing that the truth of what happened to her was hidden within her private communications. With a warrant, they accessed her phone records, cloud backups, and deleted messages, uncovering a secret pattern that stunned her family and friends. For nearly 3 months, Madison had been communicating with someone using the alias Aiden R., an individual who had carefully avoided video calls, in-person meetings in public spaces, and any traceable online presence. Their conversations revealed a slow progression from casual encouragement to emotional dependency, with Aiden positioning himself as the only person who truly understood her fears, her insecurities, and her dreams. Psychological experts later described the communication as a textbook example of coercive grooming, a process in which a manipulator gradually isolates their target from trusted relationships by creating emotional reliance and subtle paranoia. Aiden frequently suggested that Madison's friends did not appreciate her enough, that her parents were overly controlling, and that she needed someone who would protect her. Over time, Madison began sharing details about her schedule, her favorite routes home, and her typical weekend plans, unknowingly handing over a map of her life to someone who may have been planning her destruction. The final exchange between Madison and Aiden occurred less than 30 minutes before she left the party. In that message, he urged her to meet him somewhere private, claiming there was something urgent he needed to tell her, something that couldn't be said over the phone. He assured her that it would only take a few minutes and that he would explain everything once she arrived. Investigators believe this message was the turning point, the psychological trigger that led Madison to deviate from her normal route and drive toward Canyon Road instead of heading straight home. As police expanded their investigation, they began questioning everyone who had attended the party, slowly uncovering inconsistencies that hinted at hidden tensions beneath the surface. One name emerged repeatedly: Tyler Brooks, a 23-year-old acquaintance who had known Madison since freshman year and had been seen speaking with her several times that night. Witnesses recalled that Tyler appeared unusually attentive, frequently positioning himself near Madison and offering to walk her to her car, an offer she declined. Surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store later placed Tyler's vehicle near Canyon Road shortly after midnight, contradicting his initial claim that he had gone home immediately after the party. When detectives interviewed Tyler again, his demeanor had shifted dramatically. His confident tone had been replaced with nervous pauses, his timeline became fragmented, and he struggled to explain why his phone had been turned off for nearly 5 hours on the night of Madison's disappearance. A search of his apartment uncovered a prepaid phone hidden inside a drawer, registered under a false name, and containing messages that matched the communication style of Aiden R. Forensic analysis confirmed that this phone had contacted Madison repeatedly in the weeks leading up to her death. Yet even with this mounting evidence, the case was far from straightforward. Tyler denied any involvement in Madison's murder, claiming that their online relationship had been harmless and that he had only used a fake identity because he was afraid of rejection. He insisted that he had asked her to meet that night only to confess his feelings and had left when she failed to show up at the agreed location. However, data from cell towers placed his phone within half a mile of the canyon trail during the critical time window, and GPS records from his vehicle revealed unexplained detours that aligned with the location where Madison's body was found. From an investigative standpoint, the pattern was becoming alarmingly clear. Tyler had created an emotional bond under false pretenses, manipulated Madison into trusting him, lured her to an isolated area, and likely used a sedative to weaken her resistance. What remained unclear, however, was what had happened during their final encounter, and whether someone else had been involved in carrying out the crime. As prosecutors began building their case, a final discovery threatened to unravel everything they thought they knew. Hidden deep within Madison's cloud storage was a voice memo recorded just hours before the party, a recording she had never sent to anyone, in which her trembling voice hinted at a confrontation she had planned and a secret she had uncovered about Aiden that made her afraid. And what Madison revealed in that recording would soon expose a truth far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Before we move into the explosive revelations that finally brought this case to court, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments, because your support allows us to continue telling stories that demand justice and remembrance. When investigators finally gained access to the voice memo Madison Reed had recorded on the afternoon of March 12th, the atmosphere inside the Riverside Police Department's digital forensics unit became unnervingly quiet. Detectives, analysts, and supervisors gathered around a single computer monitor, fully aware that whatever lay inside that recording could either confirm their suspicions or completely dismantle a fragile case they had spent weeks assembling. As the file loaded, no one spoke. When Madison's voice emerged through the speakers, soft, hesitant, and trembling beneath forced composure, it immediately became clear that she had been carrying a burden far heavier than anyone around her had realized. In the recording, Madison explained that she had recently discovered the true identity of Aiden R. after accidentally cross-referencing one of his phrases with a classmate's social media post, leading her to Tyler Brooks' private account. She admitted that the realization had left her feeling betrayed, frightened, and uncertain about how to confront him without provoking anger or retaliation. Her voice cracked as she described how Tyler had gradually isolated her, encouraged her to doubt her closest relationships, and convinced her that he was the only person who genuinely cared about her safety. She confessed that she had agreed to meet him that night at the party's conclusion, not because she trusted him, but because she wanted answers and planned to end all communication permanently. The recording ended with a haunting sentence. "If something happens to me, please don't believe that I wanted this. I'm scared, but I can't keep pretending anymore." This recording transformed the investigation overnight. Prosecutors now had direct evidence of psychological manipulation, emotional coercion, and premeditated intent, establishing a clear motive and demonstrating that Madison had recognized the danger but underestimated its severity. Behavioral experts were brought in to testify that Tyler's actions fit the profile of an obsessive controller who feared abandonment and responded to rejection with escalating aggression. They explained how individuals with this pattern often create alternate identities, exploit emotional vulnerability, and justify violence as a form of preserving a relationship. When Tyler Brooks was formally charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and obstruction of justice, the courtroom became the stage for one of Riverside County's most emotionally charged trials in decades. The proceedings drew national media attention, filling every seat with journalists, students, activists, and families who saw Madison's story as a tragic reflection of hidden dangers in digital relationships. Throughout the trial, Tyler maintained an expressionless demeanor, rarely reacting as prosecutors presented months of digital evidence, surveillance footage, GPS records, and expert testimony detailing how he had orchestrated Madison's final hours. The prosecution reconstructed the night with chilling precision. They demonstrated that Tyler had waited near Canyon Road after sending Madison the final message, had administered the sedative through a drink he had brought under the guise of reconciliation, and had driven her unconscious body to the canyon after she lost the ability to resist. Forensic specialists testified that the pattern of bruising on her neck was consistent with prolonged manual strangulation, suggesting a moment of intense emotional rage rather than a sudden impulsive act. Cell tower records placed Tyler's phone at the scene for nearly 40 minutes, contradicting his claim that he had left immediately when she failed to arrive. The defense attempted to argue that Madison had willingly met Tyler, and that her death resulted from an accidental overdose combined with panic. However, this narrative collapsed under cross-examination when toxicologists confirmed that the sedative dosage had been carefully measured and that manual strangulation was the sole cause of death. Furthermore, investigators revealed that Tyler had searched online for how long sedatives last, remote canyon locations near Riverside, and how to delete phone metadata in the weeks preceding the crime, evidence that demonstrated calculated planning rather than spontaneous behavior. Perhaps the most devastating moment of the trial came when Madison's parents took the stand. Her mother described the last time she had spoken to her daughter, recalling how Madison had sounded unusually quiet, but reassured her that everything was fine. Her father spoke about teaching Madison to drive on the very roads where she would later be found, his voice breaking as he explained how he had once believed those routes were safe. Their testimony transformed the courtroom from a legal battleground into a space of shared grief, reminding everyone present that behind every statistic was a life permanently erased. After 6 weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Tyler Brooks was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As the judge read the sentence, Madison's family held hands in silent relief, knowing that while justice could never restore what had been taken from them, it could at least prevent Tyler from harming anyone else. In the years following the trial, Madison's story sparked widespread discussions about online safety, emotional manipulation, and the hidden dangers of digital anonymity. Universities implemented new awareness programs, advocacy groups expanded outreach initiatives, and parents across the country began having difficult conversations with their children about trust, boundaries, and psychological control. Madison's family established a foundation in her name dedicated to educating young adults about recognizing early warning signs of coercive relationships, ensuring that her legacy would be one of protection rather than tragedy. From an analytical perspective, this case demonstrated how modern crimes often unfold silently, hidden behind screens and carefully constructed personas, long before physical violence ever occurs. It highlighted the importance of early intervention, digital literacy, and the need for communities to take emotional manipulation as seriously as physical threats. Madison did not disappear because she was careless. She disappeared because someone exploited her kindness, her honesty, and her belief in the goodness of others. Today, a small plaque stands near the canyon trail where Madison was found, bearing her name and a simple message: let truth protect the living. It serves as both a memorial and a warning, reminding visitors that danger does not always announce itself loudly, and that sometimes the greatest threats wear familiar faces. If this story moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes to realities many prefer to ignore, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support allows us to continue telling stories that honor victims, uncover truth, and give voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves.